Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast Aftersight. I am your host, Penn, and I hope everybody has had an amazing week. I did want to remind everybody about our upcoming hike. That is our fundraiser. This will be our second annual hike. It's our Bringing Print to Life hike. This year, it is Sunday, August 28th in Estes Park, Colorado. And as usual, just like last year, if you are print impaired, the hike is absolutely free. It includes breakfast, lunch. It includes all the support on the hike, sighted guide, all of that fun stuff. And for those who were on the hike last year, this hike is much easier this year, so you don't need to hesitate to sign up. It's only 3 miles round trip. It's at the YMCA of the Rockies in Estes Park, Colorado. It's going to be a beautiful hike, but it's only 700 feet elevation gain. And just like last year, we will be joining people who are in wheelchairs, who are deaf and hard of hearing, people who have had their legs amputated, whatever. We all have barriers, right? So we're all going to do this together. It is a fundraiser. So if you want to sponsor a hiker or get more involved in that, our fundraising stream, please get a hold of me. And it's real easy to register. You just go to our website, AINColorado.org, and click on hike. Again, that's AINColorado.org. And just click on hike. And thank you for those people who've already registered. It's going to be a fun time. So we hope to see you up there on the mountain. Now, when we come back, I'm going to introduce you to some pretty amazing guests today, Sabrina and Jody, and we will be right back.
You're listening to Aftersight with Penn Street, an AINC original podcast. If you enjoy what you hear, please visit AINColorado.org for more shows, news, and articles read by our amazing staff and volunteers. If you have a question for Penn or would like to recommend a guest for future shows, please visit AINColorado.org/podcast-guest. And now, here's your host, Penn Street.
Welcome to the podcast, Sabrina and Jody. How are you doing today?
Great. We're happy to be here.
Great. Wonderful. Jody and Sabrina are from a nonprofit that's out of Littleton, but they do cover the entire state. I do want to let the audience know that we are going to be talking about situations that might be uncomfortable. So if you have experienced abuse in your life and you want to skip this week, we totally understand, and we'll see you again next week. But we definitely, I always want to start the podcast out with getting a little bit more information about the two of you before we start diving in. So I have some just kind of fun questions so our audience can get to know you just a little bit better. So Sabrina, if you had a theme song, what would it be?
It would be Wild Thing.
Ooh.
But I'm really not wild.
I like that.
Yeah. But it's fun, and I like that.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's great. What about you, Jody?
The Pharrell song, Be Happy. That one.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's always a catchy
That is so awesome. Absolutely. Do you like downloads or going to concerts in person?
Definitely concert in person.
Concert in person.
I do love concerts in person, but most of my music listening is on my phone or in my car.
Oh, yeah. Especially with COVID, I think it changed a lot how we feel about being in big crowds. Huh?
Yes. Yes.
Another question is horror films or romantic comedies?
That's easy for me. Horror. Definitely horror.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you?
I think I'm discovering that Sabrina and I might be opposites.
I know.
I would prefer the romantic comedy. I mean, I find horror films kind of I actually find them funny most often. Because they're so ridiculous.
Wow, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
So ridiculous.
That's awesome.
Well, I would agree with you on that, Jody, that most horror movies aren't very scary.
No.
So, yeah, it's hard to find one that actually
Some of them can. I'm a little sensitive to them, so sometimes I think they're a lot scarier sometimes than other people do.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So Sabrina and Jody, could you just share basically the mission of the work that you do at the Crisis Center?
Yeah. So first, I just wanted to make a little correction because at the beginning, you said that we serve the entire state, which we serve the 18th judicial district. So ideally, every county in the state would have its own domestic violence agency. But unfortunately, that's not the case. So we actually serve the 18th Judicial District, which includes Arapahoe, Douglas, Lincoln, and Elbert counties. And all of our services are free. But I'm going to let Jody is our program director. So I'm going to let her explain the services that we
offer. Great. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and while we serve the 18th Judicial District, our crisis line and our emergency shelter are available for all survivors. So whether it's a person in the 18th judicial, so like we do have people coming from even sometimes out of state for those services. So just want to clarify that. So people can reach out to, like I said, our crisis line and that type of thing. So yeah, the Crisis Center provides services for persons who've been impacted by domestic violence. So that includes adults and or their children. And we serve all survivors. So individuals from female, of course, is primarily, or individuals who identify as female are the bulk of the people we serve, but we also serve men in our program as well as people from the disability community, people from the LGBTQ, elderly, anybody who reaches out to us for service. So we've been in existence since 1985, 37 years now, I think it is. So been providing services. It started out as a crisis line, and we do have an emergency shelter. So we have space to provide services for people who need to escape from a situation where they need safe and confidential shelter. Things look a little different right now with regards to that because of COVID. We have up to 7 beds, but we have also been partnering with a local hotel and providing sheltering services in that way, because during the pandemic, we wanted to ensure that we tried to keep people as safe as possible from spreading COVID. And so we don't have people who are unrelated sharing bedroom spaces. Whereas before we would have, if we had 2 single people, they might share a room together. So now we are, and are finding that, obviously that is also probably a more trauma-informed approach, and, making sure that when people are in an emergency shelter situation, that they have the space to kind of not necessarily have to share that space with somebody who's a complete stranger.
Yeah.
So we have our 24-hour crisis line, like I mentioned, that is staffed 24/7, including holidays. And that's for people who might be looking to, just want to process the situation. It could be, seeking our shelter services or seeking some of our other services. A lot of times it's information and referral to other programs, et cetera. So it can be a wide gamut of, if we're not the best fit for somebody who's calling our crisis line, we'll get them connected with other resources. So that's our 24-hour crisis line. And then we have also our legal advocacy program. So they help individuals kind of navigate through that civil legal process, as well as to provide support during, if a person has reached out to law enforcement to report a situation and they're involved on the criminal side, we can provide support during those situations too. Our legal advocates are not attorneys. They are trained advocates kind of on how to help people navigate through the legal system, which can be super complex and it can be overwhelming. Yeah. And a lot of times what we see is the people that we're working with are often representing themselves in a court situation. So they aren't, able to afford an attorney or pay for an attorney on their own. So imagine, trying to go through that process without the legal background and often, facing attorneys for whoever is using those abusive behaviors against them. So it can be overwhelming. So we just try to provide that emotional support. We can give people also the kind of guidance on what it's going to look like in court, as well as, maybe the paperwork that they need to, gain access to complete in order to do any, file any civil kind of protection orders. Or a lot of times we are seeing the bulk of what we're seeing is people needing support around family law issues of, custody and divorce, separation, those types of things. And then our other program we have is our therapy program. So we have licensed clinicians who provide therapy to adults and children. And that is all free and not time limited services either. So we have people who are trained in providing services to people who've been impacted in a trauma informed way, and they're all trauma informed therapists. And so we do have that service as well. And then we have our community-based advocacy program, which that is primarily for people with, like Sabrina had mentioned earlier, people within the 18th Judicial District. And that is kind of an intervention of an evidence-based program that provides community advocacy services for a period of about 10 weeks. There's some flexibility around that, but it's pretty intensive and it's completely guided by the person we're serving. So whatever they feel that they need the most supports in, our advocates are going to get them connected to those resources. A lot of the focus is on safety planning and how to help people navigate in the future in terms of their safety, as well as how to go about accessing resources and kind of gaining some skills in, that arena so that they can be self-reliant in the future and kind of finding the resources that they need to help, keep themselves and or their families safe. So those are our programs and services.
So when somebody calls the crisis line, and we will have the number and all of the information shared today, we will have it in our show notes. But when somebody makes that call, do you do some sort of assessment with them so that they know, so you can kind of get an idea of what's needed, what resources and services that are needed?
Yes. So basically what happens is we kind of just, find out from the person on the other end of the line, what are they looking for? What kinds of services are they in need of? If they're looking to come into our emergency shelter, there is a screening process for that. And there are a series of questions that we ask in terms of determining if the person is, are they truly needing confidential shelter? Are they in fear of, whoever's using the abusive behaviors, are they afraid that they're coming after them and potentially how harmful that is, or that person may be? Okay. We do kind of a assessment around what's called lethality. So basically asking some pretty personal questions around what kinds of behaviors has the person using abusive behaviors shown. So, are they using weapons? Are they threatening to physically harm the person or kill the person and or their family? We talk about strangulation and those types of things, because those are all high indicators that person's in a really dangerous situation. So that for that piece, we do ask some more pointed questions, but basically it is whatever, we allow the person who's calling us to kind of guide that phone call, and then just determining what are the best services, so are they wanting therapy services? And we will connect them. We have a navigator who then does an assessment with them at that time, if that's, if they're saying, yes, I want legal advocacy, or I'm interested in the community-based advocacy or therapy, we do connect them with our navigator, and then they kind of fully explain all of our programs and services, and then the person gets to decide if this is if they want to move forward with that. And then there is some paperwork that that has to be filled out as well.
And I know statistics show that people with disabilities are way more likely to have encountered abuse of some sort in their life. Mm-hmm. And I know people with and I'm one of those. What sort of training or process? So if it was somebody with a disability and they called the line, are your advocates trained to be sensitive towards the different disabilities? And what does that sort of look like?
Yes. So all of our advocates go through quite an extensive training. And part of that training is we partner with Violence Free Colorado, who has some online training that our advocates go through. Okay. And actually, there is a whole section on supporting survivors with disabilities. And so it talks about, some of the barriers that might exist for people with disabilities, and, how to best support them. We've also done training in the past with the initiative out of Denver. They also support survivors with disabilities. And so we've had them come and do training with our staff as well. And I think, for us, it's a process of learning too, of like how to best support survivors. I mean, we have worked with Dove. They serve people from the deaf and hard of hearing community. And so we've had them come and provide training as well. And so I think our building, our shelter is accessible, as well as that's also where we do our therapy program. So it is an accessible building. It is marked. We have an elevator. We do have markings for exits and bathrooms, and that are all for persons who are visually impaired. We are in the process also, just so people know, that we are in the process of updating our website to have the Recite Me accessibility toolbar. So that will be able to help people navigate through our website a little bit more. So it is one of the areas that we are, when we talk about our efforts around equity, diversity, and inclusion, is one of our areas that we are focused on in serving, being able to effectively serve people from the disability community.
I just want to jump in there and, just confirm what you said, that it's at least twice the rate of domestic violence that people with disabilities experience. So it really is, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem for everyone. And then, of course, there's additional barriers, right? If you're visually impaired, that add additional barriers. So we're really, really proud of the new website with Recite that's going to launch by the end of this month. In addition, we're constantly, as Jody alluded to, we're constantly looking at our services and seeing, can we be more accessible and all of that. So we're constantly doing that, and always open to feedback too from people that come through our services, and if they are visually impaired, and make sure, there's a lot of things that you have to think of that you wouldn't necessarily think of with someone that's not visually impaired. For example, don't touch them without asking first. You always say your name, tell everyone who's in the room, things like that without these partnerships that Jody's talking about and getting these trainings, and we might not necessarily know that. And we want to be as trauma informed and as accessible to everyone as possible. So it's constant. We're always improving or trying to. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful that it's nice to see that, because it wasn't always that way. Even in my adult lifetime, I've had a couple of incidences, and the first thing out of people's mouths is, we'll describe the perpetrator. well, that's difficult if you can't see them, or like somebody like with me who has extreme blurry vision out of one eye, and that's the better eye. It's my description of them is going to be very different than somebody who has 20/20 vision. And it's almost like in the past you were just disregarded because, well, you can't identify your perpetrator or perpetrators except for the voices and things like that. And you really were sort of treated like, well, this case is not going to go anywhere because you can't even identify who did this. And so it's wonderful that I know things have gotten better, and even in the police department and rape crisis lines, and and even with the amazing work that you guys are doing, and we still have a long way to go. But it's wonderful to see that you guys are raising the bar and making those things happen, because especially with a disability and in particular with vision issues, your world becomes small. And so it's so easy for people with ill intent to make that world even smaller. Yes, because if you take away their cane, you take away, or you don't allow a guide dog in the house, that just cuts you off. Or you don't have a phone, or something does happen and you don't have a phone, you can't call Uber, you can't call anybody. Right. And, if you live out in the middle of nowhere, it's like, you can't just, even if there is a car out there, you can't go jump in the car. And you can't drive it. So all those issues.
Absolutely. It's all those extra barriers. And in addition, and very often, the abuser may be the caretaker as well, right? And so you're relying on this person to take care of you. So not only do you have all the other barriers that a survivor has, but you're also potentially losing the person that's caring for you, even though they're hurting you at the same time, right? Like it just adds just so many more layers. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And, and one thing that is commonly told to survivors of domestic violence is, pack a to-go bag. Well, when you're visually impaired, you may not even be able to pack the bag. And then, and even, even people with sight have trouble sometimes with their abuser hiding their bag or whatever. But it's just, it's that even more difficult when you can't see. So,
Or medication, I've heard horror stories about that, caregivers withholding medication that would, it is frightening. Can you, the two of you, share a little bit about why you got into this type of work? It's not for everybody. And so how did you guys make the decision that this is someplace you wanted to land?
Well, sure, I can go first. So I've been with the Crisis Center. It will actually be 12 years in December. And I came from Minnesota. I moved here due to my partner's job. And so I had left a job that I had been at 21 years. And actually my former life, I worked with, my job there was working with persons with disabilities. So persons with physical and developmental disabilities. So I'd been there so I'm quite versed in, kind of supporting people with disabilities, and it's something I'm very passionate about. And so when I came here, I was looking for a position, and I saw the job here at the Crisis Center, and I applied for the job as the shelter manager. So at the time we had a 27 bed shelter. And so, because I had worked, in residential in my previous job, like we had, I think at the time I left, there were 18 homes that we had in the community where we supported persons with disabilities. So I was pretty well versed in kind of managing and operating shelters and homes for people. And so that was my job when I started here. So, I've always worked in human services, and I didn't, when I came here, I didn't have a lot of knowledge of domestic violence, but you learn pretty quickly. And I think it's just I believe in our mission, and I think the work that we do here is it's life changing for people, for some people, and they put in a lot of individuals put in a lot of work to make changes and positive steps in their life. And we're all about survivor-driven services. So whatever that might look like for the person, we're here to support them. Whether it's the choice that we would make personally, maybe or maybe not, but a person's in control and has autonomy over their life and the direction that they want to go. And we're just kind of here to walk that path with them. So I think it's very much, getting people. I think it's oftentimes helping people, get reconnected to resources, build their confidence, and their self-esteem, which because of domestic violence is sometimes what is so, broken down in a person, like, because if their partner is continually, emotionally and psychologically abusing them, then that takes a toll. And so trying to kind of gain that self-confidence back. And so I think I just truly believe in our mission. I think it's, we have a great team of workers here too. And so I think that, we have a good reputation within our community. And like I said, we've been in existence for over 35 years. And so, we have a lot of connections within our community and can really help people get connected to, I think of course, there's always challenges and struggles, but, we do our best.
Yeah. Thank you. What about you, Sabrina?
Yeah. So, it's kind of interesting because I was impacted by domestic violence as a young adult, but that's not what led me into this field. I was a stay-at-home mom. I was ready to go back into the workforce, and then I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so when I got my diagnosis, I started volunteering with Home in Denver, ended up on their staff, and from there just fell in love with nonprofits and just always wanted to work in something that's supporting other people. And I really believe that, when we lift others up in our community, we lift up the whole community up. And, so I actually started working at the Crisis Center just in March, but I have been working in domestic violence a little over 10 years. I was previously at another domestic violence agency. And prior to that, I worked briefly for a school for parenting and pregnant teen moms. So very passionate about just helping people and trying to break that cycle, right? This cycle of abuse that happens from generation to generation. That also, we don't educate people about what healthy dating looks like. And most people don't grow up with a good model of that. So really educating people. Exactly. But, just real briefly, like when I was young, a friend of mine had gone to get a restraining order against her boyfriend. And she came back with a piece of paper that said, does your boyfriend or girlfriend do these, and it had a list of 10 behaviors. And I marked off 7 of those. For my boyfriend at that time. And that didn't end the relationship right there, right? But that was the first time my eyes kind of opened and went, oh, what's going on here? But unfortunately and ironically, my brother had gotten my boyfriend at the time a job and they all worked at the Federal Center. And my boyfriend was the team lead for my brother's best friend, Eric, who called in late one morning. And I believe it was in the spring. It was the early 90s. I do not remember the year. He called in late for work. He followed his wife that he was getting a divorce from, followed her, rammed his car into the back of hers on 15th in California, murdered her and murdered himself during rush hour traffic in downtown Denver. And it was really, really devastating. It was just awful. And that really impacted me back then. And I didn't know what to do with it or how to deal with it. And so I just find it ironic that here I am working in domestic violence and trying to help other people. And so one of my passions is not only educating young people, but also getting into different corporations and stuff. Not enough people know that, domestic violence happens to, the statistics say 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men. That means these people are working for you, right? Very likely. Yeah. And so it's really important that employers know what to look for, both as someone that could be a victim and someone that could be a perpetrator. So they could intervene, because as my boyfriend at the time was his team lead, and he had expressed, I didn't know what to do. That Eric kept saying he was depressed and he couldn't live without Margot and all of this, but and they just, everything will be fine. There was an opportunity to intervene, but nobody knew what to do. So let's give them those tools to intervene, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for listening to part 1 of Aftersight with Penn Street. Please come back next week as we continue our conversation with Sabrina and Jody from the Crisis Center. As always, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and to serve.